You are listening to Talking Star Wars.
Hello, Star Wars fans. I'm Alex,
And I'm Connor,
and today we're going to talk about Star Wars.
as we normally do, and today we're kind of coming at this from a more somber point of view. This is serving as an immemorial video to James Earl Jones, who's had a wide and illustrious career, but he is synonymous with that of the character Darth Vader, specifically the voice of Darth Vader.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us today for episode 78. Darth Vader, iconic villain and iconic voice. So, Darth Vader, first appearing in A New Hope in 1977, almost immediately became one of the most iconic, both visual villains and acted and well-known antagonists in almost all of modern fiction, um, to a degree that in nowadays is almost kind of shocking. You do not get that kind of immediate cultural adoption these days.
Mhm.
Um, we can even think of other villains that might come close. I mean, you could think of like the biblical snake, Thanos, the Joker from Batman. Um, but really, to have a villain that could be like recognized like by merchandise or a picture by someone who's barely even seen or never even seen the media they're from, that is rare. And Connor, I'm having trouble thinking of anyone other than Darth Vader in modern Western media that has the same cultural gravitas and recognition that Darth Vader has as a character.
I really can only grasp for some Disney villains like Captain Hook, Maleficent. Uh, these characters who, like Darth Vader, have a visual screen presence, a vocal screen presence, and kind of act as these larger than life figures. But again, with the cultural phenomenon that is Star Wars and how much exposure it's gotten, very few figures have kind of risen to the same status that Vader has.
And why do we think that Darth Vader, especially the version seen in the original trilogy and then in many ancillary media depicting him, is so both popular, feared, and compelling? And I would say that's a mix of several factors.
Mhm.
One, I think it's just one of the best visual designs for a villain ever made, drawing heavily on Japanese sort of shogunate samurai um, armor aesthetics, the all
Mhm.
black, the cape, the subtly red eyes, the height, the physicality. That all of that I think contributes to the sense of Vader as this unstoppable juggernaut.
Yes, there are so many times throughout the series where just the silhouettes or the visual of Vader alone strikes fear. Um, I have complicated feelings when it comes to the use of Vader in Rogue One, but I must admit that at the end of Rogue One, where we see Vader's hallway battle, we see his lightsaber illuminate the room. Um, and he doesn't even have to speak to have an intimidation factor. That's something that was used to wildly, you know, positive effect in recent years, but it's something that's been sort of inherently baked in Vader's iconography since the beginning. Just looking at him walk onto the the rebel ship at the very beginning of A New Hope, and seeing
Are
how much. Hmm?
referring to the Tanative Four, the blockade runner owned by Bail Organa and captained by Captain um, Antilles.
Yes,
No,
that very one. Um, seeing him just stand, head and shoulders above the stormtroopers. Um, I call it sort of like the disappointed parent stance, just hands on his hips, displeased. Doesn't have to say anything, and you get the sense of his presence, of his intimidation. Um, and then, he, for lack of a better term, opens his mouth, and the sort of deep, booming, thunderous voice of James Earl Jones gives that Vader so much character. Um, there's really nothing like it that's come before or after. I mean, we've had 1950s robots that have voiceover, danger, danger, Will Robinson, but something so uh, mechanical with the automatic breathing mixed with that organic fright is incredibly unique.
Yeah, so I would say, and we're going to circle back because we are going to then talk about the best lines James Earl Jones ever delivered as Vader and discuss why they're so impactful. But so I think we've identified visuals of Vader as one reason he is so iconic. That a recognizable silhouette, the colors between his black attire and his red lightsaber. Then the voice of James Earl Jones, deep, resounding, commanding, emotive, uh, and so like masculine and frightening, kind of at this same way, commanding
Mhm.
respect and fear. And then I would say that the third primary reason that Vader is so iconic is that he is never treated as a source of humor or slapstick or like used to show how powerful the heroes are at his expense, like you see with some villains. Like I think the trope is called the Worf effect. And
Sure.
for those who know that, where to show how powerful this villain is, or to show how um, great this other character is, you take someone who's iconic, and then you have them be defeated or threatened by this new character. Um, the Worf had the flu. It's I think the exact trope for those who uh, check that out. And you see this like, I mean, like, example like Team Rocket, who are always defeated by the heroes. Or you even see like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z is
Mhm.
a super frightening villain, but then eventually just becomes has jokes at his expense that happen. So you have and this can work and it's fine, but Vader, while he can be involved in darkly humorous scenes at other people's expense, is never himself treated as the butt of a joke. He is always this restrained ball of rage, and you never feel safe for anyone who's interacting with Vader. It's a
Mhm.
remarkable consistency of writing and world building. And I think like from him threatening Lando to uh, even in like some of the novels when he's interacting with people like Thrawn to um, when he's talking to Luke and conflicted about his son, he is never treated as the butt of a joke. And I think in the way that a villain might in like Marvel, for example, which is one reason I think
Mhm.
Thanos is such a great villain in Marvel is because Thanos is never treated as the butt of a joke, until like something like Vision season 1, where he's already dead in the main storyline. So then we can, that's a
So
perfect
separated.
example of
Yeah.
yeah, of my Worf effect, where there's that episode of Visions in the MCU where Super Infinity Stone Ultron is there. And then Thanos shows up and Ultron just kills him in 10 seconds. It's like,
Mhm.
this is how the scale of that villain. You don't ever see that happen to Vader.
No, he perpetually is a very seriously taken character. I think of Kenobi, which is or not canonically, but just in terms of current histories, our latest appearance of Vader, and he is humorless. That's one of my favorite depictions of Vader because you don't just see him, okay, I'm an intimidating badass who's in charge of the Empire. You see like that get upset. You see that get emotional, and you see what that rage does when he has to face Kenobi.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. It's not like he doesn't hit his head on something or trip over himself. He, you know, and they toe the line between he's really cool and he's also an evil dick.
Mhm.
Um, because you're supposed to find Vader compelling, as I said before, but also Kenobi is trying to remind us that he's also a Dark Lord of the Sith. and does terrible things. He stood by and watched Alderaan get destroyed. He tortured Han Solo to draw Luke out of hiding. He has been the fist of the Emperor and subjugated and killed so many people. He executes underlings who don't serve him and cuts through rebels with his lightsaber. He
Mhm.
is, you know, a force of nature and rage. And it's Star Wars is also the thing that's like, oh, you think he's really cool, but remember, he's also super evil. This is not a noble demon situation where, oh, he only kills people worse than himself. It's like Vader is a murderous Sith. So while you can find it interesting to watch him on the screen, he's going to threaten the characters you like as well.
Mhm.
Like, uh, yeah. So that's my assessment of Vader as a character and why I think he's become so iconic. It's between the visuals, the physicality, the aesthetic,
Mhm.
and how the in-universe treats him consistently as this incredible threat.
And just to quickly mention, just kind of a piece of evidence as to how Vader has permeated society. I just think about all the references to him in other media. You know, I grew up reading and watching the show The Indian in the Cupboard, which is this story about a magical cupboard. And this boy has a Native American action figure and or little statue, and he puts it inside the cabinet, and then it becomes alive. And so in the movie, the boy puts all of his toys in there. And one of them is clearly Darth Vader, and you hear the sound effects, you hear the music, you see him fighting something amongst all the other creatures and characters this kid is put in there. Um, Plus, you get references in shows like that '70s show, which is filled with direct Star Wars references and even plot discussions. I think one of the episodes is about going to go see the original 1977 film. And then one of my favorites is in Back to the Future, where Marty McFly, you know, dons this hazmat suit and says that he's an alien called Darth Vader in order to intimidate his father in the past. So uh, when we have our culture itself recognizing and reflecting other pieces of media, that's when you know that the media is, you know, widespread and popular. Can you recall any other pieces of media that Vader has been featured in or just has been mentioned?
I would say that Vader visually in cinema probably heavily influenced Peter Jackson's depiction of the Nazgul in Lord of the
Sure.
Rings.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, we always knew that they were dark cowled, wielding weapons, um, from the books that predated Star Wars. So it's sort of a which influenced who first situation, sort of like Dune.
Mhm.
But George Lucas made movies first before anyone adapted, the highest quality movies for Lord of the Rings that we have at the time. And
Mhm.
so I would say the way in which, especially the Witch King, is never treated as the butt of a joke, is always threatening when he appears, has this um, auditory and visual and threatening component. So I would
Mhm.
say that that's another part of popular culture that Vader heavily influenced.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. The sound design, just the sort of raspy whisperiness that accompanies each of the ring wraiths. Um,
yeah, every villain in every cinema is trying to chase the high that is Darth Vader in some way. And many don't, you have a lot of knockoff Vaders out there. None usually quite reach the height that Darth Vader is able to reach as villain quality.
uh, and as far as reflecting into actual villains, it makes me think of Immortan Joe in Mad Max, who, is this towering, uh, physically damaged, yet still intimidating villain with a breathing apparatus. Uh, that, is a direct reflection from Vader, just, repainted white. Uh, what's helps him stand apart is that Immortan Joe cares very deeply for his brides, and you can feel that emotion in a compassionate way, even though it was definitely misguided.
We might have different thoughts on the thought of Immortan Joe. I see him as possessive, controlling, and gross, rather than
Oh yeah,
compassionate.
it's
So
not,
I
it's
would
not a
say,
healthy compassion. I agree.
yeah, he's a.
Yeah.
I think that's almost like a looking at the archetype of, oh, this cool villain Vader. It's like, yeah, and he's a sexually abusing rapist. So
Yeah. When I say compassionate, I should just say passionate because it's not so much, you know, uh, a caring compassion for others. It is just very passionate feelings, and those are definitely for the less than savory uh, acts dealt upon his wives. So
yeah,
anyway,
I will accept this reframing.
yeah.
Um, but I would agree that again, this is a villain that was made after Star Wars and is grappling with that image. It's like, yeah, the physical changes, the visual distinct nature, the um, way in which he rules over his faction, all
Mhm.
tying back, not if not a direct inspiration by living in a world in which Darth Vader exists, inherently influences how you depict a villain.
Mhm.
I would say even the Mountain in Game of Thrones, well,
Oh,
less of a
sure.
character and more of a force at some points. He's this unstoppable black armored antagonist
Mhm.
who, murders a bunch of people at the behest of his superiors. So, yeah, in a post Vader world.
His
So,
his shadow looms large. Yeah.
yeah. So all that said, this is one reason we find Vader to be iconic, but we also want to take this episode to admire the work that James Earl Jones did over the life of the character. He voiced Vader himself personally for 40 years. It was only in the last 3 or 4 years that he uh, licensed the use of the reconstruction of his voice into Disney's AI voice tool to allow the voice of Vader to continue, the royalties of which will go to his estate now upon his death. And we don't want to lessen the impact of actors like Hayden Christensen, David Prowse, uh, or Sebastian Shaw, who have all depicted Vader in different ways, and other voice actors who have done the voice of Vader in smaller games, or other authors who have written the voice of Vader, such as Timothy Zahn and others. But at the same time, we want to admire, with his passing, the weight that James Earl Jones lent to his character. And in that way, to put a capstone on this episode, Connor and I want to review the top handful of lines. So we want to do 3, 5 lines each, Connor, of like the best delivery in any media that James Earl Jones ever delivered as Vader.
Yeah, I think I could pull three from top of my memory, and we'll see if any of these cross over with the ones that you picked.
All right. So here at the end of our episode, we're going to pick the best 3 lines, both either from a delivery perspective, a world building perspective, or just plain evil badassness that James Earl Jones ever delivered in the voice of Darth Vader. So, Connor, I've been going on for a while. What is number 3 for you? Third best line James Earl Jones ever delivered as Darth Vader.
So this falls definitely into the category of just pure badass lines, but it also, gives a great look into his character, and you brought it up before. But it is the interaction between him and Lando on Cloud City in The Empire Strikes Back when Lando says, "You said that the princess and the Wookiee would be left at the city under my supervision." And Darth Vader says, "I am altering that deal. Pray I don't alter it any further." First of all, intimidating, badass, but it also shows that Vader's in control. Uh, Vader and his authority supersede all. This comes across in his presence in the Empire because you never see Vader subservient to anyone other than the Emperor. We have all of these Moffs and Grand Moffs and Imperial officers running around, and all of them answer to Vader. So to have him demonstrate this sort of directly with Lando, it sticks out as one of those memorable lines.
Yeah. So I'll alter one of mine. So just in the same scene, let's just add, and we can just part up all the same delivery is perhaps you feel you are being treated unfairly. Being, which does not by itself feel like a threatening line, but the way in which James Earl Jones delivers that when he's backed Lando into a corner, along with that other line, altering the deal. Just everything about Vader and Cloud City like that, all those lines, iconic. And I would say Empire Strikes Back is the best Vader movie because I call it the Vader off the chain movie, where we
Oh,
had
sure.
Tarkin has his restraining bolt kind of in the first movie. And then by Empire Strikes Back, Vader is no longer second to anyone. He's in command of his own fleet and just rips through the galaxy like a force of nature.
So yeah, definitely just his most intimidating presence. But
I'm going to go to my number three, which is actually from Star Wars Rebels season two. So James Earl Jones still did the voice of Vader, reprising his role like 40 years later after he did that in the original movies. And this is Vader to Ezra Bridger, a Jedi Padawan who stands no chance against Vader whatsoever. And so he is standing atop his TIE fighter confronting this plucky protagonist, and Ezra Bridger defiantly says to Vader, I'm not afraid of you. And stepping down to face this young Jedi, Vader utters the line, then you will die braver than most.
mhm.
And it is iconic and just one of the best lines, even like later in life, that James Earl Jones ever delivered as Vader. I love what it
Mhm.
says both about Ezra's character and Vader's character. And Vader's not so while Vader doesn't like respect people, he treats most situations seriously. If you're ever not being treated seriously by Vader, you're probably not worth his time, such as director
Mhm.
credit in Rogue One. But he treats
Yes.
Ezra is here with a lightsaber facing him and does not run away, shows personal bravery. And so Vader gives him the respect due that opponent, and then proceeds to absolutely demolish Ezra and force him to flee. Uh, Ezra barely escaping with his life, which Ezra is should be happy he even managed to survive a few seconds against
Mhm.
Vader. So that's my line number three. Then you will die braver than most.
Absolutely cold. I love it.
All right, Connor. So, what is your number two for lines delivered as Darth Vader by James Earl Jones?
So this one, it's kind of the opposite of what I picked before. It's not a badass line. It's not an intimidating line, but it's one that kind of humanizes Vader. It's kind of one of the only lines that we get to hear James Earl Jones speak as Anakin. And I had a toy of Darth Vader, kind of GI Joe tall one with different audio features, and it had lightsaber sound effects, and it also had just different lines that he spoke. And one of these last lines is, "Nothing can stop that now," referring to his death. "Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes." And it's just a reminder that underneath all this menace, underneath all this fright, there's just a person, and his name is Anakin underneath all of that. So it's just an incredibly resonant line, and it reminds the audience that this once thought unstoppable foe is really just another character who we'll learn about in upcoming prequel trilogy.
Yeah, Return of the Jedi definitely does great work in whether Vader deserves redemption or whether redemption is something you can ever deserve. It's sort of a general theme of Return of the Jedi anyway, but making it clear that while Vader is a force of evil, he is still a human is a very important part of the themes of Return of the Jedi. And I think that line's puts a capstone on that journey through the movie. And people have various thoughts, like Leia's never able to forgive him, Luke does, but and whether he deserves it or not is sort of beside the point in that it is about his personal redemption. Even and he's atoning for his crimes as best as he can by killing the Emperor and then dying himself.
So then your number two pick, Alex.
Right, I'm going to go back to A New Hope because I think we have to grab something from Vader's first appearance in film. And so I'm going to go with just for the world building that it does and for how it just established him as a character. His confrontation with Obi-Wan in the back hallways of the Death Star after Obi-Wan has disabled the tractor beam and telling him, when I left, I was but the student, and now I am the master.
Mhm.
Just for what it implies between the two, and just clever world building, like establishing the world existed before this movie and will continue to exist after this movie. And we're just seeing a snapshot of the world in a particular frame through what the film is showing us, which is very clever world building. And also just the delivery, where there is the pride and arrogance, the somewhat edge of reticence and the respect for Obi-Wan because he is his master and he takes the situation seriously. But then also the boastful, quiet boastfulness. And he is also correct. Obi-Wan at this point does not stand a chance against him.
Mhm.
It also lets Obi-Wan slap back with one of his best lines ever, which is "Strike me down, and I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." It's just those James Earl Jones and Alec Guinness's lines, going back and forth there, iconic. We're gonna go with James Earl Jones' delivery of um, "When I left, I was but the student, and now I am the master."
Yeah, you get this first sense of real personal investment in Vader, because he cares about the Empire's goals and all that entails. But this is something of a personal vendetta for him, and so it anchors him as more of uh, an antagonist, as a character, rather than just a force of nature like he was before.
Yeah, and Vader has respected almost no one through the rest of A New Hope other than Tarkin. He does Tarkin's bidding, but for Admiral Motti in the meeting between all of those, he's force choking people. He's breaking the necks of um, Captain Antilles. He's murdering and intimidating his way through the movie. And then he meets Obi-Wan and he gains this threatening gravitas of the shared history between them. And while he boasts to his master, he then seriously makes every attempt to defeat him. And
Mhm.
it diverts him from the more practical considerations of his plan to track the Millennium Falcon back to the Rebel base. He goes all in on defeating Obi-Wan.
Yeah, you know, it makes him curious about this student that Obi-Wan had before his death.
Yeah. So that's my line to Connor. So now we come to our number one picks, and you get first crack at it. What is your best Vader line ever uttered in the voice of James Earl Jones?
So this is tough because, as you said, at near the end of his life, James Earl Jones had a sort of he's written off his rights to his voice, which in some cases, if an actor chooses to do this, then by all means. And I think that in the case of James Earl Jones doing this for Vader, it is fantastic. I mean, this is something that we will get to have his voice live on. We will get to have this character live on without having it uh, be an impression or uh, something lesser than what it was. It'll never be the same, but it'll be as close as it could be. And one of the best representatives of that is the Kenobi show. And I'm not sure how much he was able to record himself and how much it was this program. But just hearing his intensity, his fury when fighting with Kenobi is incredible. So I could go and choose the exchange where we get to hear Anakin's voice fluctuate between Vader's, where he says, "I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did." But I think that's epitomized sort of early on in their first confrontation, where Obi-Wan first sees Vader and asks, "What have you become?" And Vader replies, "I am what you made me." So that amount of pain, vengeance, fury, all of that uh, is embodied in so few words that's got to be my number one pick for a James Earl Jones, at least flavored line.
Yeah, I see that. And Kenobi is definitely showing a raw, younger Vader before he is more established in his position. The man who was the fist of the Emperor, killing his way across the galaxy, putting down rebellions, and just his utter laser focus on defeating Obi-Wan, snapping the necks of children in the street. Um, just in a way to remind us is that Vader is evil in that scene. But then the fusion of Hayden Christensen and James Earl Jones voices in the partially shattered mask, uh, just great stuff.
Killing. So yeah, then that brings us, Alex, to your number one pick for a James Earl Jones Vader line.
All right, people will probably not be surprised about my line, but I feel like it needs its place at the top of my pyramid here, and that is from Empire Strikes Back. Luke's hand has been cut off. They are facing each other in the above the void of the vertical tunnel in Bespin. Vader has made the offer to Luke to join him, and then Luke has said he'll never join him because he killed his father. And in the most deep, serious, iconic tones, James Earl Jones looks at Luke holding out his hand and says, "No, I am your father." And the entire world of Star Wars twitches and shifts just enough, hinging upon that line delivered by James Earl Jones,
Mhm.
casting all events previously in a different light. I have read at the time that some people were wondering if they should believe Vader or if Vader was lying to Luke,
Oh,
but it seems
sure.
like the majority of people, accepted this because for what we've seen, Vader never really lies to people, and that's one reason he's another. He doesn't have to, and so if you take him at his word, it then becomes then Obi-Wan lied. Why did Obi-Wan lie? How did he father Luke? What's going on
Hmm.
here? It's one of the most exceptional twists in cinema history, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And like even when the line was delivered at the time, they had David Prowse in the suit deliver a different line,
Hmm.
that Obi-Wan was his father, or something similar, so that no one would know what the twist was before the movie came out. And only Mark Hamill, James Earl Jones, and um, the people on set and George Lucas knew what the line was before the film was finalized. And so just the swelling music underpinning his voice, the line, Luke's reaction as he search your feelings, you know it to be true, uh, in a dark echo of how Obi-Wan told him to trust his feelings.
Hmm.
That whole scene, but just hinging on the line, "No, I
Yeah.
am your father." My pick for the best line James Earl Jones ever delivered is Darth Vader, both for
Okay.
impact and for performance.
Hmm. It is such a significant line in pop culture history. Its delivery is impeccable. And echoing what you're saying, some people thought that Vader was lying. James Earl Jones himself thought that Vader was lying when he was recording it. It's one tidbit from, I can't remember which uh, Star Wars documentary it was, but yeah, just to show how much of an unexpected turn that revelation was. Um, yeah, definitely the most standout line that the character read.
All right. So we can't really go into too many more lines as our episode is coming to a close here, but Connor, throw out just rapid fire some honorable mentions for lines for you for James Earl Jones that our fans will recognize.
Hmm. No disintegration stands out. Uh, just giving Boba Fett the most badass bounty hunter in the galaxy a direct order.
No disintegrations. I would
Hmm.
say fighting Luke, impressive, most impressive, and also from
Yes.
before that, all too easy. Everything Vader says in Empire lands very well with me. I'm a fan.
The inflection on your sister in Return of the Jedi is something that's pretty carved out in my brain. Once Vader either reveals that he knows about Leia, or he kind of gets a read on it from um, just Luke's thoughts.
Yeah. From A New Hope, As You Wish, to Tarkin when he stops force choking the Admiral in the meeting. Uh, and then, if this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador? One of his first lines ever uttered, just with
Mhm.
the barely restrained rage. Throw that one out there.
Yeah. Find the rebels, I want them alive. Uh, that's quite a way to close his opening line as well in that film.
Uh, I'm gonna add careful not to choke on your ambitions, director, to Krennic.
That's
One of the few times Vader's making
mhm.
a joke. Um, but you're not really supposed to find it funny because he's about to he's one of those things where it's like you find Vader cool because he's inflicting pain on someone more petty and less cool than himself. But still, it's kind of a messed up thing to do is to someone comes to you as a power broker and you force choke them and then you show humiliate them with your power over them. So
Yeah.
showing the pettier side of Vader, Anakin Skywalker could always be a little petty, and Darth Vader
Mhm.
being the same person is the same.
Yes. And I don't have another line pick, but uh, just to kind of end, it goes back to the thought that if, you know, Vader takes you seriously, he will treat you a certain way. And if he does not take you seriously, if he doesn't respect you, then, he's going to be disrespectful towards you. And that goes to show that, even a cheesy dad joke has its place because it just shows how little respect Vader has for Krennic.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll throw out one final line, which is when he, in a line, promotes Captain Piet to Admiral Piet while he's force choking Admiral Piet, now Admiral Piet's boss, to death behind him, as Piet desperately stares at the hollow screen and doesn't acknowledge that his former commander was being murdered. So that'll be my last honorary pick at the end there. Um, just to deliver of Admiral Piet, pressing that subtle emphasis to show that you've been promoted. Right is his predecessor. Slams to the deck behind him, dead.
Mhm. So cold, so good. So yeah,
So
that's a legacy that you know won't be forgotten, especially if Disney has anything to do with it, because I'm sure that they will be getting use out of those likeness rights, which is a topic that we'll touch on in the future.
yeah, in the future, we definitely want to talk about more depictions of Vader, him as an unstoppable villain, his role as an antagonist, all the media he's been depicted in, and how that varies. Like some media where he's a villainous protagonist, and others where he isn't uh, straight up antagonist, and how he's evolved as a character going forward. But in this episode, we wanted to focus on his both how he became so iconic and how James Earl Jones the law is what we would say a great portion of how he achieved this ascendancy in the world of cinema villains.
So yes, thank you for joining our celebration on James Earl Jones and Darth Vader, and join us soon for more Talking Star Wars. We'll see you sometime soon in a galaxy right here.